Hi, live from the occupied nation's capital. You're in the War Room. It's Tuesday, the 16th of February, the year of our Lord 2021, now with over, 36 million downloads. We're on Real America's Voice, John Frederick's Radio Network throughout the country. Also on Rumble, Telegram, Gab, Pluto, Roku, everywhere. G News, GTV, in Mandarin simultaneously. A ton to get through today, including President Trump throws down on Mitch McConnell as hard as you could possibly throw down. And we got Boris Epshteyn, I guess a new op-ed going up on National Pulse even as we speak.
Be up in about 30 seconds.
And what was your podcast? You just came hot off your podcast. What was it about?
I got to tell you, Mike,
the hottest podcast in the world.
I'm not saying it's above War Room in the rankings, but
we're feeling the heat. We're feeling the heat.
I had Mike McCormick on. He was talking to us about some stuff that's never been reported before. These Biden beach bashes that the vice president used to throw for reporters. And he actually gave us some of the names of the reporters who have attended these things. We'll actually be publishing a whole list from the visitor logs of who went to these beach bashes that Biden used to throw.
What's a beach bash?
Apparently, it was his summer party. All these reporters
up in like Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, places like that.
I think it was actually at the residence here, the vice president's residence in Washington D.C. And they
at the Naval Observatory.
That's correct. And they did this whole beach scene, and it's just extraordinary information from Mike McCormick. You can get it on the podcast. It's up now. Listen to it right after the War Room.
What was his observations on Kamala Harris? Putting out calls. By the way, that story exploded this morning. Kamala Harris putting out calls to
your story, by the way.
Putting out calls to foreign leaders.
Yeah. Again, more insight on that as well. And as we reflected on this morning, perhaps an intentional play to get her warmed up to lead the United States delegation at the G7 this summer.
That's what his belief is.
Yeah, that's right.
That would be pretty historic to have her lead that. It's something going on very fishy. Okay, we've got the massive storm hitting. I think it's supposed to hit tomorrow night in Washington, D.C. Coming across, going to be, I think, 5-7 inches of snow. But it's the rolling blackouts. Now have Daniel Turner, by the way, followed by Peter Navarro, followed by Boris Epshteyn. All kind of breaking news on your favorite project, the Lincoln Project.
It's like my favorite of all projects.
Looks like the Lincoln Project is imploding. Okay, Daniel Turner of Power the Future. Daniel, thank you for coming on the War Room. First off, what's the story of these rolling blackouts? How come states in the United States, these power grids, can't give power to Americans during winter? Is it how many people in Texas? And I think Governor Abbott now is going after the Power Commission in Nebraska. I think there's 60,000 people in Nebraska. The temperatures out there, anywhere from 0 to 5 degrees. There's no power. What's the story? Why do we have rolling blackouts in these states?
And what you're seeing in Texas is what happened in California over the summer when they were having the heat waves. These states are unable to maintain the grid in extreme weather, and it's because they are building a reliance on renewables. And I want to make it clear, I don't oppose wind, I don't oppose solar, I oppose the subsidies for them, of course, but in terms of just technologies, they're fine. But they are not perfect. They have huge drawbacks, and one of the drawbacks is when the weather doesn't cooperate, they don't work. And so when you're making, instead of 5 or 6% of your electric grid as wind or solar, 20-25%, well, that's a really big risk without any redundancies, and Texas is suffering it right now.
Is that what Texas is? The Texas, I think it's, I don't know if it's FERC or ERAC. Is this what they've done? Have they actually put 25% in Texas as in renewables? Is it that high?
Absolutely. And this is a mandate that it has come from Republican governors, right? In 2005, Rick Perry signed into law that a certain percentage of Texas had it hit by wind renewables. Why? Why are we forcing wind if the marketplace isn't forcing it? If the people aren't clamoring for it? We've bought into this notion that fossil fuels are bad. Heck, if Texas bought into this notion fossil fuels are bad and they're pushing wind, again, without these backup system, they have taken 3 coal plants offline in Texas in the last decade, and the population has grown. Their energy use has grown 20%. So in the same decade that they're removing coal, they're growing their energy use. This is just math. It's a failure of physics. It's a failure of math.
Hold it. Under President Trump, we went to not just energy independence, we went to full spectrum energy dominance. Natural gas, whatever it was, going to have nuclear come back, all of it. If you have full spectrum energy dominance, how can we be in the winter of 2021 where we've got rolling blackouts in the state that's essentially the energy state, which is Texas. I think people are asking the question, how does it, when it gets cold, it's 5 degrees there, millions of people without power, not just pole lines down, which happens in ice storms, but because of there's some problem and you got rolling blackouts. How can that happen if you're energy dominant?
Exactly. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen at the state level. It shouldn't happen at the national level. And these are state level problems. Like I mentioned, it's happening in California. It's happening in Texas. States are allowing this to happen because they are buying into this renewable energy mandate. And it looks great, right? You get tremendous credits from state and federal government, green credits to put in these systems. In theory, they say it's going to reduce your carbon footprint, so you get the greenies off your back because you're buying into wind and solar, as Republican governors of Texas have done. So it looks like it's a win-win. But when you're taking reliable energy, oil, gas, coal, et cetera, when you're taking that offline and supplementing it with wind and solar, it's not going to add up unless the weather is always perfect. And the weather is not always perfect. The sun doesn't always shine. The wind doesn't always blow. Or in the case of Texas, you get freezing rain and it stops the wind turbines from turning.
Okay, let's go. You talk about these mandates, and we've got the Paris Accord. You have all these different treaties they want to sign, and we get to China eventually, right? The rarehead of all this. When you talk about the mandates, what mandates are you really talking about? And how would that change now that we've gone back? I mean, one of the first things President Trump did was get out of the Paris Accord. And it was, of course, a huge fight internally, right? A huge fight externally. And it wasn't it wasn't that he doesn't believe in renewables. It's just that the deal was so bad for the United States, it let essentially China off. I mean, this is why we had the problem, Raheem, with the Gilets Jaunes. They had to tax the working class people in France, and particularly rural France, what an additional tax on the diesel gasoline that the elites, hey, we want to get to zero carbon, but it's the little guy that pays for that. And then they had to pay the increased tax to basically pay for China's pollution. And China is, and as you say in one of your tweets today, they're building more coal plants today than I think in all of Europe. So talk about these mandates. What mandates are you talking about that Texas is trying to get to with renewable energy? Because I don't think anybody opposes renewable energies. You want to use your resources as smart as you can. But what are these mandates, and why are they playing on these blackouts?
Yeah. Exactly. These are mandates that are self-inflicted, right? The governor of Texas in 2005, it was Governor Rick Perry, he imposed this on himself. By a certain date, we will get X percentage of our electricity from renewables. No one made him do that. He did it to appease the green movement. He did it to look like he cared about the environment. But you see this on multiple levels. On the same way, Gavin Newsom, by the year 2035, we will have a mandate that 100% of our cars are electric. He's imposing that on the state. Now, if people want to vote for that, that's fine. I mean, it's not, but people can vote for it. But this idea that these decisions happen in a vacuum is stupid. What's going to happen to the car market in California with this mandate? What's going to happen to the electricity market in Texas with this mandate? And that's the nonsense that we're dealing with, especially from the Biden administration. What President Trump did by getting rid of these mandates is he allowed the free market to put the best solutions forward. And when it's solar, when it's wind, when it's a combination, let that happen. But you cannot have government politicians force these decisions because it throws logic, science, math, economics out the window. And people suffer as a consequence.
One of the reasons for the recall is the mandate that Newsom had for renewables that are causing these rolling, or one of the causes of the rolling blackouts, one of the principal causes. When Perry or Newsom put a mandate in, like when Perry puts it in, if Abbott doesn't like it, or if the state legislature doesn't pass it statutorily as a law, can't somebody just reverse it? Why is Perry get to put a mandate in, just a target? It's like the targets in the Paris Accord. They could always move around, and particularly that's why China's always able to get away from any kind of requirements they had or any obligations they had. They could always slip it.
And that's why what angers me about these executive orders coming from Biden is, where is the pushback from any Republican? Going back to the Paris Climate Accord, how have we had this a second time signed into an executive order with no Republican saying second? The Senate passes treaties, not the president by executive order, right? So yes, we need another president who will just undo the Biden administration's executive orders. Notice none of this is done by law, right? This is all done by executive order. It's going to be done by the Department of Energy, the Department of Interior, the EPA, et cetera. What happened in Texas in '05 was passed by their legislature. Maybe the legislators will say, we don't need these false mandates placed on our state because there are now 17 dead people. And there are 17 dead people because they are forcing wind and solar ahead of its time. I'm not opposed to them, but the technology is not there. And when you have to have a helicopter blasting antifreeze to unfreeze a wind turbine, it should be telling us something that maybe the wind turbine isn't as reliable as the fossil fuels powering the helicopter blasting the fossil fuel antifreeze.
And you're saying this is why Abbott right now is going after the Power Commission and say, hey, how can we be 20 to 25% renewables when we got these massive problems there? Okay, let's go. I want to go to China. I want people to understand the underlying problem here is that China is trying every type of energy, and they don't care how much carbon they're putting in the atmosphere. All they care about is powering their economy to basically have world hegemony. So talk about China and the Paris Accord and how it affects the people in this audience's lives.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of articles that talk about how, well, yes, China has a lot of coal power plants and they're building more, but they're only running at 50% capacity. They are also buying wind and solar. And that's true. They are investing in wind and solar because they are made in China. They have the monopoly on wind and solar, and they have to buy a lot of their coal from places like Australia. They don't want to have to buy coal. So coal is their backup plan, right? They have a backup plan, but they want to go wind and solar because they don't want to give up the leverage to a country like Australia. They don't want to have to buy oil and gas from a country like America. China has to import 11 million barrels of gas a day. We don't have to import any, or we didn't under President Trump, but that's going to be switched soon, right? So China is doing this purely for strategy. They do not want to be beholden on any foreign country, America, Australia, the European Union, for their power. We had that. We had total energy dominance, and we are reversing that to buy wind turbines from China, to buy solar panels from China. 70% of them are manufactured in China. So we are going to forego American coal, American oil, American gas to buy Chinese green technology. How is this a strategic win for America? It's mind-boggling. China itself couldn't come up with a better policy.
I just want to make sure people know. John Kerry went to the UN, I think, Raheem, in 2019, in September, the same time that Nancy Pelosi laid out that press conference up there. She was going to move to start impeaching the president off of the phone call in the Oval Office in August, right? In fact, we started the show, I think, a couple of weeks after that we should start an impeachment show to basically support him because she was, you could tell right then. Kerry's up at the UN, and he says, I'm going to meet with China because if they don't get serious about their commitments to the Paris Accord is finished. We'll never even be able to get back in because we had pulled out of it. I tell you what, Daniel, hang on for 1 second. I want to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back. I want to get you to finish up, and then we got Peter Navarro to talk about this. You've got rolling blackouts, 17 people dead in Texas. The governor of Texas is all over the Power Commission. What is going on? You got blackouts all over the Midwest with temperatures at 0 to 5 degrees. We're going to turn Peter Navarro, then Boris Epshteyn right after that. The President of the United States throwing down hard on Mitch McConnell. We're going to return in just a moment.
Boris's op-ed is up.
Boris op-ed right now up at the National Pulse. Make sure you read it before we get Boris up here at the bottom of the hour.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're with Daniel Turner from Power of the Future. Real quickly, I just got Kerry was there in 19 during President Trump's, I think, third year, talking about right before they started the impeachment, saying he was going to have a meeting at the UN with China to see if they could sit there and meet their obligations for the Paris Accord because they were still in. We were out. Now Kerry's on the National Security Council. He's special advisor for climate change. That's now at the National Security Council level. You know, DOD, it says, it's bigger. It's a bigger threat than China, bigger threat than the CCP. Just right now, coal production plants in China to power their economy so they don't depend on anybody versus the rest of the world? Did they care? And we just came back into the Paris Accord. Do they care anything? Does the CCP care anything about how much carbon they're putting in the atmosphere?
None whatsoever. They have absolutely no intention to reduce their carbon footprint. They will increase their carbon footprint exponentially every year. They are building more coal plants now. Currently, they are building more coal plants than all of Europe has combined. And that is going to increase in 2022. They have no plan to change, and they will just lie. And they will lie to John Kerry, and he will believe their lie. They've lied about this pandemic. They lie about their operations in the South China Sea. Why do we think that China will suddenly be honest when it comes to their carbon footprint? They lie about slavery and concentration camps. So they have no intention to change their carbon footprint because their goal is world domination, and they need coal and they need electricity to do it.
Okay, Daniel, how do you get to Power the Future? What's your Twitter is on fire all day. How do people get to you? What are your coordinates?
Thank you. Powerthefuture.com, and I'm Daniel Turner, PTF for Power the Future on Twitter, and we talk about these things all the time. So thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Daniel. Look forward to having you back. Okay, Dr. Navarro, Peter Navarro joins. Doctor, I was going to talk about rolling blackouts, but I want to stay with China. We'll get to the rolling blackouts. You were one of the biggest voices there to say, hey, look, everybody agrees with renewable energy. It's this deal that's the problem. And the deal allows China to cheat, and the rest of the world's got to pay for it. The Gilets Jaunes revolt back, I think, in December of 2018 was because the working class people in France got a diesel tax put on them by Macron and the guys, Raheem, and the people in Brussels and in Paris to pay for the Paris Accord, to pay for basically the Chinese cheating, the CCP's cheating. This deal, Kerry's just gone back into, and you're seeing the implications in places like Texas and Nebraska today when you have 0 to 5 degrees and you have rolling blackouts. This is how these multilateral deals like the TPP and the Paris Accord, this is how they blow back on the American people.
Yeah, and blow up as in blowing coal dust up the nose of John Kerry. That's what China is doing, Steve, because the reason why we got out of the Paris Accord was not because we were not supportive of carbon dioxide emissions coming down. It was simply that deal was structured to give both China and India basically a decade-long ability to keep polluting even as we were supposed to crack down on ourselves. And the irony, Steve, is that under President Trump and his deregulatory agenda and energy dominance agenda, we actually outperformed Europe in terms of reducing carbon emissions. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Let me show you my background today because I want to walk you through a little bit of this. For your radio audience, I got a dual thing up on the screen here. And on this side here, you've got a guy on a bicycle with a kid, and behind there, it's a typical scene in China. And the thing you got to understand is all this pollution in the air, you really can't see more than 100 yards here. Within 7 days, Steve, that stuff comes to the west coast of California. Okay, so when China is building more power plants than all of Europe combined, they do it in a year, basically that stuff doesn't stay, what happens in Beijing doesn't stay in Beijing. And then on the other side here, I love this picture because you got this woman, mother with a little kid, and she's wearing a mask, but this mask well predates the pandemic. She's not wearing that because of the China CCP virus. She's wearing that because you can't breathe in that friggin' country. So it takes about 2 weeks for China to build a power plant that it takes us years to do. And I wrote this book, Steve. I hate to be right sometimes, but I wrote this book, my first book at Harvard in 1984, called The Dimming of America. It had a beautiful foreword by James Schlesinger in it. And I predicted that there would be widespread electricity shortages around the year 2000, which is exactly when they hit. Now, why did I predict that? It's like this whole thing in Texas didn't start with renewable energy in the 2000s. It actually started back in the 80s with a regulatory failure where rate regulation simply didn't provide appropriate incentives to build coal or nuclear plants. So this has been a slow, long decline. And Texas, I mean, the thing interesting about Texas is that not only do they need to unfreeze the wind turbines, the gas pipes froze. So Mexico's now in the cold as well. So we've got a crisis on our hands, and we got to make some choices. And an energy future has to involve carbon. And I've always thought that it was like stupid to try to control carbon at the demand side, right? I mean, it's just, even if we do it, even if Europe does it, China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, they're just going to let her rip, right? So the policy should be on the carbon capture, on the supply side of the carbon, if you're going to do it. So this is not going to be pretty. More people are going to die.
But hang on. Besides the cold weather freezing things up, how has these deals, these mandates, how did we get in the situation that we're mandating ourselves to hit certain targets, yet we're letting the biggest, the second biggest economy in the world, the CCP, the China, have unlimited. They're building plants in 2 weeks. They're building more capacity now than Europe has of coal, and all the coal plants they built are not.
It's
they're
really
not highly
stunning
scrubbed.
how quickly they do it.
But how are we allowing that to build more, putting restrictions on ourselves?
Don't bury the lead there. Scrubbers, right? It's like we instituted scrubbers back in the 70s. What are scrubbers? They're these things you put on a power plant which take out the particulate, some of the emissions. And the thing is, they raise the price of coal-fired power plants by 30%, right? So when China does it, they just go out and they put these things in without scrubbers or any kind of pollution control technology, and that stuff goes up in the air, and people die. I mean, over 1 million people a year die from lung disease related to that kind of stuff. But again, it's important to understand, Steve, 7 days on the jet stream, and that stuff comes right here. Now, what we're doing here with our policies, I mean, there's just so many different things that we do wrong. But, when Perry, here's the thing, when Perry in Texas said, okay, we're going to go environmental, he was actually also playing into the electric utilities in the state, because the way the regulation works is that utilities couldn't earn an adequate rate of return on coal-fired or nuclear plants, ergo they stopped building them. And that's what I pointed out in the 1980s, and it hasn't really changed that since then. So you got a regulatory failure, you got playing up to the environmental wing, and now we've got a situation where this is going to get incrementally worse over the next years. I mean, California is perilous, and now Texas. I mean, Texas was supposed to be impregnable when it came to keeping that grid going.
We got about two.
And if it can happen in Texas, it can happen anywhere.
Okay,
go.
You got 2 minutes. I know that Abbott's going after the regulatory board now. However, for bringing jobs back and to be competitive, Biden's saying, I want to be competitive. We're not going to confront CCP. We want to outcompete them. How can you do that? You're an economist. How can you do that if your energy costs are dramatically different than the CCP if they're burning open coal? How does that work?
See, this is the seeds of the Biden failure. You can throw another $2 trillion at the U.S. economy in the short run and prop it up temporarily along with the stock market. But over time, as he undoes our 5 points of the Trump policy growth compass, deregulation, which had, energy dominance, the tax cuts, the fair trade, the defense spending, as you do each one of those incrementally, you slow everything down. I mean, maybe Biden's trying to solve our electricity grid problem by basically slowing the economy down. Not the best way to do it. I say that who knows what's happening over there with Kamala Harris in the Oval now talking to foreign leaders.
Okay, how do the people get to your website? And when they go there, in addition to what you're doing on putting out, you've got the Navarro report, and you'll be the first person called to the reconciliation struggle session of Nancy Pelosi's commission, right? What else can people get when they go to Peter Navarro reports? PeterNavarro.com. We're going to have up the immigration report that I shelved when I was in the White House because of the pandemic.
But with Biden basically getting ready to undo the Trump immigration policy, I think that's going to be a real eye-opener for everybody, because it just shows just how illegal immigration hurts blue-collar America, urban America, African Americans, Hispanics. So that's up there. And then Real P. Navarro to just stay abreast of the latest moves here, working with the War Room.
We're going to have Steve Camarado from CIS. He was going to come on today before Peter. We're going to go through all the immigration because of the breaking news on Mitch McConnell and others. We're going to have Camarado from CIS on tomorrow. We're also going to post Peter Navarro's report on immigration, on the economics of it. You'll understand why blue-collar Hispanics in the Rio Grande are supporting President Trump and supporting him in 2020, and why Perez, the head of the DNC, the former head of the DNC, said it's foreign influences doing it. Okay, Dr. Navarro, thank you very much. Great background. Those backgrounds are all world. Short commercial break. Boris Epshteyn is going to join us. He's got a new op-ed up on National Pulse. We're going to talk about Lincoln Project. We're going to talk about Mitch McConnell, and we're going to talk about his op-ed. All next on War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, I don't know if the timing on this is exactly right, but Boris Epshteyn puts up a in-your-face op-ed on National Pulse, correct? Correct. About McConnell and all that, and then the president comes out with a statement that's a hard throwdown. Are those inextricably linked, or did you have a direct communication? Did you let him see Boris? He wanted to one-up Boris?
There are no conspiracies.
But there are no coincidences. How your staff at National Pulse is telling me, Boris, you can come in here. Boris Epshteyn joins us.
Oh,
the staff was telling us that Boris was extra diva on this.
Oh, just unbelievable. I mean, you know,
I like to keep it tight.
The brightness on my headshot is incorrect, and there's a full stop in the wrong place in the headline. And
okay, I want let's get down to the substance. Let's talk about what Boris said, and then let's talk about what the president said in his statement about Mitch McConnell, to kind of counter Mitch saying, hey, I'm going to get involved in these things and make sure we have electable candidates, not particularly MAGA candidates. Boris, what did your op-ed say? And then, Raheem, I want you to talk about what the president said about Mitch McConnell.
Steve, great to be with you. Thanks for having me. Raheem, thanks for publishing on National Pulse. Looking great today with the pink tie and the pocket square. I got to say before we jump into it, Steve, I think you may be in the clothing business, the sartorial business, because Peter Navarro, that's a full Bannon in blue right there. He's got the Bannon in blue outfit. All he's missing is the billion pens. Yeah. He got to send them some pens.
I think it's COVID related. We got to get Navarro to start following Raheem. It's too much.
Yeah, we do. I think you got to go that route. I'm kind of in the middle here with my outfit. Here's what I'll tell you. Yesterday, after being on this show with the MAGA Brain Trust, which are your listeners and your viewers, where I walked through the recent history of the Republican Party and how terribly the establishment has done, I thought that's a perfect piece, and Steve, you and I spoke, that's a perfect piece to put out there right on time for the National Pulse, which is breaking through and getting amazing traffic up there. Raheem, thanks so much for getting done fast, and to all your team, really no joke, really great work. So the point of the piece is this. If Mitch McConnell and the Republican establishment want to expunge, and I use that word in the piece, want to expunge President Trump and the MAGA movement from the Republican Party, that is political suicide. You will then go back to 1996 when Bob Dole got just over 39 million votes. And if you look at 92, the loss by George Bush Sr. after winning the first Gulf War to Bill Clinton, 96, absolute trouncing. In 2000, George W. Bush lost the popular vote, eked out Florida by 537 votes. In 2004, George W. Bush, after 9/11, during a war, barely beat the absolute charisma lacking, achievement lacking, lack of any personality John Kerry. 2008, an annihilation, and I was there, I lived it, an annihilation of Senator McCain by Barack Obama. 2012, another trouncing of Mitt Romney. And 2016, the MAGA revolution brought President Trump to the White House and stemmed the tide of Republican losses over and over and over again. The Republican establishment, the elitist, globalist, pro-unfair trade Republican establishment cannot win elections in this country long term. It's just not going to happen. That is why what the Republican establishment should do is not commit political suicide, recognize President Trump as the leader of the Republican Party, the same President Trump who got almost 75 million votes in 2020, did historically well with Hispanic Americans, African Americans, Jewish Americans, the best Republican performance with Jewish Americans since 1988. Recognize President Trump as the leader of the GOP, the MAGA movement as the lifeblood of the Republican Party, and let's go keep winning. Let's win in 2022. Let's take back the House and then win in 2024. That's the only way we do it, by focusing on President Trump and the MAGA movement.
Raheem, you had it up about his increased polling inside the from non-Trump polls. He's got tremendous increase of acceptance. They keep talking about electability, and they point to Georgia, the chaos of Georgia. Our show was coming from there every day with John Frederick, had him on there. The 300,000 MAGA votes they say didn't show up because the candidates and Mitch McConnell's guys would not support President Trump on getting the Georgia legislature to call a special session, not to reverse their position, but at least to hear the evidence and let the Democrats take a shot at it. This is my point. When they say electability, it's like President Trump's not bringing electability. The great gains in the House this time, the holding of the Senate, the winning of the state legislature, it's all related to the MAGA and to the America First project, is not Boris and Raheem. They're using a false narrative about electability, like Trump comes with baggage. He actually comes with the ability to bring in working class Hispanics in the Rio Grande Valley, to bring in African American working class males into this. This is the way we build a bigger coalition. No doubt. It's a Mr. And your analysis over at National Pulse shows that.
Right, and this is what I like so much about Boris's piece, is it actually brings the receipts. It brings the receipts of all of this different information that proves beyond a doubt that actually what the Republican establishment would be doing without Donald Trump, America First, at its pinnacle, is nothing other than political suicide. Now, the corollary question that needs to come from that is actually, do they want that? Do they want to have to destroy to rebuild in their image? I suspect that is what's going on behind the scenes.
You can get to the president's statement on McConnell. I think I said, but Boris, jump in here with Meghan McCain said the quiet part out loud today on The View. She said, I guess to be a real Republican, you now have to be a Democrat. Right. No, but I think this is emblematic of their thinking. To be a Republican, and that is McCain Republican, an establishment Republican, you have to become a Democrat. And that's what we're saying, is that split between the kind of populist, nationalist, traditionalist movement that Trump has led, and I think led to victory in 2016, took the House, and the House took the Senate. Here, we're not going to back off. President Trump won the election. It was stolen. We've got the receipts. We disagree. We're not saying Joe Biden is not in the office of the presidency. He's commander-in-chief. He's the chief magistrate. He's the chief executive. But we're not going to back off that. But Meghan McCain finally today says the quiet out part out loud. If you want to be a Republican in a classic sense, you have to now become a Democrat. Boris Epshteyn, thoughts?
Meghan McCain, whose mom may be Joe Biden's ambassador to London or France as a thank you for frankly stabbing Republicans in Arizona and across the country in the back. So, with respect, I think it is very disingenuous for Meghan McCain to talk about what a true Republican is anymore. True Republicans are the MAGA movement. And by the way, you know what happened in Georgia? It's actually pretty simple. It's two things. One, you had candidates who did not come out and back President Trump fully. And two, the $2,000. President Trump said, hey, Americans need money. Americans need money. Americans need help. Let's go out there and give it to them. For some reason, Mitch McConnell just got stuck on this $400 versus $2,000 thing. And Trump did that. Two senators with him. Good night, good luck.
And the mail-in ballots, Raheem. So what did the president have to say? He put out a lengthy statement. What did he have to say about Mitch?
Yeah, let's go through some of this, because it's so OG Trump. No, it is. It's back on those debate stages with the 16 other candidates, and he's throwing down. Says the Republican Party can never again be respected or strong with political leaders like Senator Mitch McConnell at its helm. McConnell's dedication to business as usual, status quo policies, together with his lack of political insight, wisdom, skill, and personality, has rapidly driven him from majority leader to minority leader, and it will only get worse. The Democrats and Chuck Schumer play McConnell like a fiddle. They've never had it so good, and they want to keep it that way. We know our America First agenda is a winner, not McConnell's Beltway First agenda or Biden's America Last. And he goes on, it's a lengthy statement that I think people need to get into, but I love when he throws down. He says Mitch is a dour, sullen, and unsmiling political hack, and if Republican senators are going to stay with him, they will not win again. He will do whatever needs to be done, or whatever is right for. He will never do, whatever needs to be done, or whatever is right for our country when necessary and appropriate. I will back primary rivals who espouse making America great again and the policies of America First. We want brilliant, strong, thoughtful, and compassionate leadership.
How do you interpret that, Boris Epshteyn?
I think it's pretty direct. Not a lot of interpretation necessary, right? The president is the 45th and hopefully 47th president. But by the way, polling by Politico shows President Trump at over 50% in the Republican Party, with VP Pence being next on 12 and Don Jr. being at 6. So President Trump's at 52.
Hold on. If you add the Trump family, it's 60% for Trump, 40% for the field. Come on.
So exactly. So that's no joke. President Trump continues to be the leader of the party, and that's now. That number is only going to grow as we see more from Biden and more from the establishment Republicans. So President Trump, unquestioned leader of the Republican Party, is saying to Mitch McConnell, who did this ludicrous speech from the Senate. I have no idea why he felt he had to do it. Maybe somebody really got in his ear. It was after the vote. Mitch McConnell goes out there and goes on this rampage about how President Trump and the MAGA movement are bad, effectively calling the MAGA movement the mob, blaming President Trump for January 6th, which is not the truth. President Trump did not incite the riot on January 6th, specifically saying march peacefully and patriotically. Mitch McConnell made a huge political mistake there, ostracized President Trump, and now he's reaping what he sowed with this statement from President Trump. And believe you me, serious action for President Trump in the future in terms of potential candidates. It was a big mistake for Mitch McConnell to do this. The right thing would have been done to say, you know what, let's come together. President Trump is the leader, and we need to together win elections in 22 and 26 and 24 and 26. Now, if Mitch McConnell thinks he's going to run establishment candidates, he's going to be down 70 to 30 in that Senate.
Okay, real quickly, the Lincoln Project, it implodes. Is it George Conway said today? Yeah. They got to wrap it up. Talk about this is a great scalp for Raheem Kassam, Boris Epshteyn. Talk to us about Lincoln.
Well, you just think about how destructive the Lincoln Project has been. Nobody's making the claim that it wasn't effective, but it's effective from an immoral standpoint, effective from an immoral base, and now we're finally learning.
What do you mean immoral?
Well, I would argue that grooming teenage boys is pretty immoral.
Is that what the charges are?
That's what the evidence we've seen. Yes. And so, Boris, over to you
Boris,
on this,
yeah.
but I would argue that it can only be a good thing for America First that these people disappear into the dustbin of history.
Boris, you got a minute. Tell us about the implosion of the Lincoln Project.
Kurt Bardella, the former spokesman, said also, it's time to wrap it up. Seems a little too convenient for all these former members of the Lincoln Project to want to wrap it up when the federal investigators are on it, the FBI is on it, in terms of what happened with Philia, what happened with covering up for John Weaver. We know Steve Schmidt's one of the worst human beings in American political history. Steve Schmidt is a horrible person, somebody who ruined the McCain campaign in 2008 that I was on. Meghan McCain even attacked him, saying President Trump wouldn't spit on him if he were on fire. Steve Schmidt and John Weaver.
Yeah, McCain. Real quickly, what's your social media coordinates?
Real quick there, let's not wrap up the project. Let's investigate the project and find out what happened with the money, what happened with covering up for John Weaver. My social media is at Boris EP, Boris underscore Epshteyn, Boris underscore EPSHTEYN on the gram. I'm coming in hot on the gram as always. At Boris EP, Boris underscore Epshteyn. And the latest op-ed on National Pulse from me, I'll be tweeting it out shortly. Thanks so much. God bless. Stay strong.
Hot on the gram and hot on the pulse.
Do you think that you agree with Boris? You think there's actually real investigations going on here for criminality?
There are. There's no avoiding it. There are real serious criminal investigations.
Okay, we're going to come back in a second. Thank you, Boris. We're going to come back in a second in the War Room with Rudy.
Thanks so much.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We got Rudy Giuliani. He's going to join us in a second. I just want to comment. There's some book out there coming out there saying, hey, Bannon was talking about the 25th Amendment. This is from a guy at CBS. It's a total fantasy, totally incorrect, total lie. For CBS, I did a 3-hour live interview. First 60 minutes, they eventually put up online on the Charlie Rose show. 3 hours. Longest interview they'd ever done. Because I demanded, I said, I want to see it all up there. 3 hours. They tried to trick me about President Trump the entire time. Absolutely bulletproof. And what I said is, you got to go after Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. This is in August of 17. I never talked to another cabinet member of the White House for years, until we started the show in 19. And then I would talk to, guess who? Rudy Giuliani and other people around the president for the impeachment. Only cabinet officer I ever talked to was Mike Pompeo. Guess what? About the Chinese Communist Party, and particularly the Chinese Communist Party in the Wuhan lab in the CCP virus. Total lie. There is no one in this country that has supported President Trump better, tougher, longer than Stephen K. Bannon. Made a film with, you guys remember, Raheem, in this very room in 18 in the midterm. Trump at war, right? Took it around the country, right? Showed it everywhere. Then the podcast, the TV show, War of Impeachment, then Pandemic, then about his election, then 2020, then the post-election. And now in the Boston Herald, I give a speech and says, hey, not only is Trump the best guy, he's got to win, he's got to run and lead the field in 2022 to take over the House, impeach Biden, and then got to run in 2024. Absolutely, categorically, Trump is our guy, has always been my guy. This is another reporter trying to be a grifter and complete, total fantasy. If you want to find out whoever said about the 25th Amendment, go and talk to Anonymous and talk to John Kelly and talk to Jim Mattis and talk to the cabinet members who Stephen K. Bannon never talked to a cabinet member or a member of the White House staff ever, or this guy ever after the 3-hour interview. We're going to put it back up online. 3 hours, they grill me to try to trip me up on Trump. Bulletproof. Rudy, you know what I'm talking about. Rudy, you were there for the beginning. In fact, we started communication with you about impeachment when you won.
I do remember.
Rudy, you've been in the trenches with me. Here's what I got to talk about, though. The Mitch McConnell. When I left the White House in August of 17, the big thing of the interview, they put 2 segments on 60 Minutes. I said, why'd you leave? I said, to protect President Trump's flank against Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. That is the reason I said I left the White House. Here we are in 2021, and the president's throwing down on Mitch McConnell. Look, you know Trump. You're his lawyer. You know him as well as anybody. That statement on Mitch McConnell, on a scale from 1 to 10, as Raheem says, Trump original gangster, OG, where do you put that? Is that close to a 10 as far as a throwdown goes?
Yeah, that's about it. Sure. I mean, you can't. Look, the man was treacherous. Not only his vote, but that whole unnecessary statement, which he knows is not true. I mean, he knows that Donald Trump didn't organize that thing at Congress. Come on.
Hold it, Rudy. It's bad. Rudy, worse than that, he says that everything that you said, everything you said, and everything that worked were all lies. All the stuff were dangerous fantasies, and everything about stealing the vote was a lie. Is that true, Rudy Giuliani? Is Mitch McConnell right? Was everything the president said a lie?
Absolutely not. The president was making statements based on evidence that exists, evidence that still exists if they'd like to look at it. Mitch McConnell never asked to look at it, never cared. Look, Mitch McConnell represents Mitch McConnell and Washington, D.C. I don't even think he represents Kentucky. And he's part of the establishment. He might as well be Nancy Pelosi. They go back and forth, Nancy Pelosi, him, Schumer. It's all about them and keeping them in power. And I don't know what he's calculating or why he thinks this will keep him in power. But for some reason, I think, getting the Washington Post and the New York Times to write nice things about him is important to him.
By the way,
Not
by the way,
country necessarily.
Trump had to bail him out in Kentucky. Trump had to bail him out. He was down. I think it was within 2 points.
When he came in.
Had to endorse to make sure that Mitch.
I've seen the poll, seen the chart. It was at 2 points, and Trump comes in and he wins by what, 12, 15?
Hold it. You're breaking news here, though, Rudy. Hang on a second. You're saying right now Mitch McConnell refused to look at the information you had that showed that this election was stolen. Mitch McConnell's people.
He was never interested. No, I can't say he refused. He never asked. He never asked to see it. I mean, how can you say it's all untrue when you haven't looked at it? Has he ever looked at the testimony of the witnesses in Michigan? Did he ever bother to look at the full transcript of Georgia, of the hearings in Atlanta? Did he ever ask a question about it of any of us? Did he ever ask, hey, is this true or not true, or what's the support for this? He had no interest in it.
Okay, hang on, Nancy.
So he's in no position to say
look,
whether it's true or false.
You know about the 9/11 Commission. Are you committed today for the president, as his lawyer and the guy that oversaw the vote, the re-election or the election fraud? Are you prepared to volunteer today to go before Nancy Pelosi's Truth and Reconciliation Commission to present the evidence that you showed the president?
Well, sure, it's a real commission. If I think it's like these things the Democrats do, impeachment, trials where it's like a star chamber, I wouldn't go near it. I wouldn't recommend anybody go near it. If it's a real commission like 9/11 Commission was, of course, I testified before them. I would love to have a venue in which I could put out everything I have. It's being censored. I mean, everything that I've said and the president said, I have support. There is no support for a darn thing that Mitch McConnell said, nor has he ever taken the time to ask, can I go through the evidence?
Okay.
Before you make comments like that, if you're a decent
he basically
man,
says that you and the president,
particularly the person of your own party,
he says that you and the president should be prosecuted criminally, the way I read it. I mean, that's how harsh it is. Raheem, real quickly, because I want to talk about the podcast.
Mitch McConnell's bag carrier, Josh Holmes, is very, very mad at reporters for reporting Donald Trump's statement today. That's how you know it's hitting home. Go over to @HolmesJosh on Twitter, War Room Crowd, and let him know he's welcome anytime to come and see the receipts of the fraud and show his boss.
Rudy, real quickly, the only hotter podcast in America is Raheem Kassam's. Tell us, your podcast goes up. What's it about? We got 30 seconds.
Tomorrow at about 6 o'clock, we'll have another edition. It'll be up tomorrow, and we'll be talking about cancel culture, and our guest will be our friend Mike Lindell.
Wow. Okay, Rudy, and Rudy's got the show on WABC every day, 3 to 4. Rudy's Common Sense is the podcast. Raheem,
go listen to the National Pulse one now. Breaking news.
Rudy's tomorrow at night. Rudy's Common Sense. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m.